The cost of a human life in East Berlin, 1974, was equal to the weight of a single teaspoon. This was an era when the architecture of fear was built not of concrete, but of the minuscule nuances of behavior. You could master the Berlin dialect, wear uncomfortable underwear from the Ernst Thälmann factory, and know every word of the GDR anthem, yet still remain a target. In the world of professional tradecraft, your legend is not a document in a folder. It is the way you breathe when you think no one is watching. David Miller, known in the Ministry for State Security files as Hans Weber, was a masterpiece of Langley's operational art. 5 years of deep cover inside the GDR Ministry of Transport. A flawless track record. He didn't just mimic the life of a mid-level German bureaucrat, he became it. His movements were sparse, his clothes smelled of cheap tobacco and caustic soap, and his eyes held that specific blend of exhaustion and loyalty that served as a passport to any Eastern Bloc agency. He was a ghost in a city where walls had ears and every flower pot concealed a microphone. The problem was that even the most disciplined agent is betrayed by his subconscious. He had a meeting scheduled at Café Mocha on Alexanderplatz. It was a gray autumn morning in 1974. The air in Berlin was thick with the stench of burning brown coal and damp fog. Miller walked toward the café, feeling the familiar weight of the microfilm in his coat lining. He checked his tail 3 times. Clean. No surveillance, no unwanted attention. He stepped inside, entering a cloud of steam from the espresso machine and the low hum of hushed conversations. He ordered a double espresso and sat in the corner, facing the exit. Everything followed the protocol. The error occurred at the 4-minute mark. The waitress placed a faceted glass in a silver filigree holder before him. Inside was a dark, oily liquid. Miller mechanically added 3 scoops of sugar. His mind was occupied with the upcoming transfer of data regarding Soviet tank group logistics. At that moment, his control slipped. His hand, guided by decades of habit from another life, began to stir the sugar. The sound of metal against glass was barely audible in the general noise. But when he finished, he did not remove the spoon. He left it in the glass. It was an American gesture, the gesture of a man used to drinking coffee on the move or in cheap New Jersey diners, holding the spoon with his thumb so it wouldn't hit his eye during the first sip. In Prussia, in Germany, in the socialist camp, this was not done. You removed the spoon immediately and placed it on the saucer, clearing the path for your lips to meet the rim. Miller raised the glass to his face, pressing the spoon against the edge, and took a sip. At that exact moment, behind a mirrored wall, inside a tiny surveillance camera labeled Number 9, a mechanism clicked. Sitting behind the lens was a young Stasi lieutenant named Kurt. He wasn't looking for spies that morning, he was performing a routine face check. But his gaze snagged on this microscopic dissonance. A spoon in a glass looked as out of place in an East Berlin cafe as if Miller had worn a cowboy hat. The lieutenant didn't sound the alarm immediately. He simply pressed the record button and signaled the mobile surveillance team. The counterintelligence machine, cold and devoid of emotion, ground into gear. The remaining 6 hours of Miller's life at liberty were a process of slow strangulation. He didn't notice the 2 men in identical gray trench coats trailing him. He didn't hear the clicks of the relays as his phone line at the ministry was tapped. The snatch squad waited for their moment. As he walked toward the dead drop in Treptower Park, analysts at the Normannenstrasse headquarters were already cross-referencing his profile with the database of suspicious persons. A domestic habit he considered part of his DNA had become, for them, a signature at the bottom of a confession. When they pinned him against the wall in a dark alleyway between tenements, Miller didn't even have time to reach for the L-pill. His arms were wrenched behind his back with professional brutality. There was no light in the interrogation room except for a single lamp aimed at his face. The interrogator didn't ask about operational plans or codes. He simply placed a faceted glass in a silver holder before him and dropped a spoon inside. The scrape of metal on glass in the silence of the basement sounded like a gunshot. The interrogator said only one phrase: "We do not drink like that here." That night, a network of 12 couriers and 2 high-ranking informants was liquidated. Decades of preparation, millions of dollars in investment, and human lives were sacrificed for a second of comfort. Human nature is a professional's most terrifying enemy. We can deceive a polygraph, we can endure torture, but we are incapable of completely erasing the trifles that make us who we are. We always return to what is comfortable. In the world of the great game, failure smells not of gunpowder, but of cold coffee. Every movement, every gesture made on autopilot is a piece of evidence. A spy is not destroyed by a lack of talent, but by an excess of humanity. Remember this the next time you stir your sugar. Your hand may know more about you than your passport. Your habit is your longest shadow, and in the searchlight of counterintelligence, that shadow always points to the truth. Never do what makes you you. Be no one, or you will become just another file in the archive stamped "terminated."